The third principle we're going to learn is providing examples. And this is where you insert a diverse set of test cases so the task was done correctly. Even just including one example can make a huge difference to performance, as we're going to see. Okay, we're just going to copy our previous prompt, and this is what we had before. First, it outlines the blog post in the specific writing style, and then we have some instructions in terms of how that should start writing. This is really helpful already. I think it's much better in terms of content. It gives us more control because we can change the outline if we want to. But the problem is that quite often what I'm finding is I'm getting like a fantasy style story in the style of Harry Potter, like that sort of fantasy. And I might not necessarily want that. There are other types of fantasy that might be interesting for me. And I still want the same sort of writing style with imaginative world building, strong character development, but maybe I want something that's a bit more sci-fi, because this is prompt engineering after all. And rather than looking backwards to like the wizarding world, maybe we can look forwards to a futuristic world instead. I'm going to stop this running, and instead of a fantasy style, what we're going to do is we're going to give it the same prompt but with a sci-fi style instead. So I'm just going to paste this in here and hit enter, and this is the exact same prompt, but the only thing I've changed is the example I gave it. And what you're going to see is it's going to generate a very similar outline, except the story, the plot points are going to be much more futuristic. And you can see here it says introduce a futuristic AI generated world. It has someone called Eli, talking about AI language, etc. So you can see that even within the instructions that we've given it in terms of style and format, there's still a lot of space to shape the story based on the examples that we're giving. And the reason why we're giving examples third is that giving direction and choosing the format usually a lot easier to do than finding good examples. But to get this example, I had to try a few different styles in ChatGPT until it generated a paragraph that I liked, and then I copied that paragraph across. So that took a little bit of extra time. I could have also written this manually myself in order to give it a little bit of a sense of my writing style, or I could have gone and found some writing on the internet that I liked and used that as a sample. Now, all of that takes work, and this is just one example that we're providing. Usually with prompts that you're using in production, it might be as many as 3 to 5 examples to really make the prompt reliable. That costs a lot of time, it costs a lot of effort. You have to know what good examples look like. And that is something that is very useful when you can't get the prompt working, but it's not necessary most of the time. Usually you can get there with the first 2 principles. That's why we put this third. So let's just see what style we're writing here. And here we go. It's talking more about artificial intelligence and this young prompt engineer named Eli. So really cool, and it still follows the hero's journey. It still follows the same writing style instructions, but instead of J.K. Rowling, which is where we started, now we're much into the fantasy / sci-fi realm, which is more unique, more interesting, and more suited to what I wanted in terms of a vision. That's really powerful. Now, giving examples also works for images as well. If we just said create an image to match this blog post in this style, then just say create an image. If we just say creating a matching image for this blog post, it's going to generate something that looks very DALL-E, and that might not be exactly what we want. So you can see this futuristic style, it looks like digital artwork, but if we wanted something a little bit different, we can provide an example of that. And I have something, it's from one of my favorite films, District 9, and instead of asking it to do whatever style it wants, instead I can provide this example. And it can read images when using ChatGPT Plus, which is really helpful because it can see that style and then translate that into the prompt that it's going to generate for DALL-E. Here we go. Very different, right? Completely different, in fact, from the original image that it came up with. So if everyone else is using DALL-E to generate their images and they're just asking for something matching their blog post, they're going to get something similar to yours, right? If you are picking out different directors you like, different images, different styles, and then using those as examples, you're going to get differentiated results, something that maybe other people wouldn't have thought of. This is much more dystopian, and you can see that is brought in here. DALL-E won't copy exactly the image, that style that you've uploaded, because it doesn't want to get sued, right, for copyright infringement, but this is close enough to the vibe that we wanted. And the real benefit of providing examples over giving direction or setting the format is that with this principle, quite often it's easier to find an example of something you like than describe what it is that you like about it. Because I like this image, I like this style of this movie, this dystopian yet futuristic alien tech type vibe, but I didn't go to film school, I didn't go to art school, I don't know how to describe it, I don't know what words to use. I might have happened upon the word dystopian, but I won't exactly know the right way to describe this. And we can actually see how DALL-E described this just by asking it for the prompt. Because when DALL-E creates an image for you, it's not just blindly copying what you asked for, it's actually rewriting your request into the type of prompt that will generate a good image. And here we go. We can see it does use the word dystopian, but it's using other words that we might not have thought of using. Like it's saying the environment is gritty and post-apocalyptic, showing signs of decay and abandonment. It talks about visible hydraulics and wiring. It talks about the backstory of survival and adaptation, practical attire. It's pretty interesting, right? Like it talks about the narrative of coexistence and resilience in a harsh world. That sounds pretty fancy. I'm not fancy enough to come up with a word like this, but DALL-E can, because it can look at that image and extract out what about this image. Because DALL-E can look at this image and then describe in better words than I can use how to recreate that type of style. And that's one of the major benefits of giving an example.